Welcome to episode 19 of Behind the Underdogs. I'm alongside Dylan Chouette and Colin Cunningham. In April 2013, 4 days before the initial release of this book, my longtime client, Kobe Bryant, tore his Achilles tendon. It takes years of tireless dedication, unimaginable hard work to build a legacy like Kobe's. It takes a single instant to change everything. 1 minute, you're finishing the regular season and preparing for the challenge of the playoffs. The next minute, you're preparing for surgery and the challenge of rebuilding your body and your future. I'm not talking about the split second it takes to sustain a potentially career-ending injury. I'm talking about the moment immediately after the unthinkable happens, when your instinctive reaction determines everything else that's about to happen. No one would have blamed Kobe for collapsing in pain and frustration. He could have allowed his teammates to carry him off the court's predictably solemn applause that loyal fans give their fallen heroes. Instead, he went to the free throw line to finish his work. To me, the only question was whether he'd make one shot or two. Made them both. Then he walked to the locker room. That is relentless. For Kobe, there was no time to think or plan or decide, no time to wait for instructions or hesitate. There was only an instinctive drive to keep going, to stay strong, to never quit. Even with a devastating injury, he finished the free throws and began the next chapter of his career. So that is a little intro to what Tim Grover talks about being a cleaner. That's his first example right there.
Pretty crazy. And I love the way he started it, because even after 50 pages, probably my favorite part was when he talks about, obviously, besides being relentless and, the definition of a cleaner, is the injuries these guys went through and came back from. And I think he kind of started off with a bang. Okay, Kobe just went through Achilles tendon. Did he completely tear it? I'm going to say no, right? It wasn't a
I'm not
complete
sure.
tear.
Yeah, I don't
But
think
still,
he'd be standing if it would be a complete tear.
yeah, to walk up there, take two free throws.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy. It's
Well, so
crazy.
this is the perfect example to start it off too, because when you think of someone who is extremely successful, they're going above and beyond, but this is going above and beyond, because most guys you think in the NBA, right? Something like this happens, they're taking a break, they're recovering and all this stuff, and he just goes right out there. That's going above and beyond. That's what a real cleaner is. When you think you're doing enough, you're not, and those guys are
Mhm.
doing even more than that.
Well,
Um,
especially like if you compare the NBA to other sports, like contact sports, like some of those guys are pretty, like, they get whacked and they go down like they've been
yeah,
shot.
yeah, yeah.
So it's,
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, a lot of the examples that he uses, at least in the first 50 pages, a lot of them have to do with injuries. And it's like, it's no coincidence that we talk about injuries all the time on the podcast. You know what I mean? Because it's something that athletes are battling day in and day out. And
yeah, it happens at every level.
yeah. And it's a constant battle because there's so many different things that go into play. It's like the mental battle where, you want to put in the work, you want to do this, you want to do that, but sometimes your body literally does not let you. I mean, Dylan, you're kind
That's
of,
why,
yeah, go ahead.
that's
You
why
can
I
talk
liked
about
it
it.
so much, because I could relate to it.
Yeah.
Like, I know
Yeah.
exactly what he means. Not obviously to that extent. I'm not playing in the NBA, but like, I know exactly how someone feel, or like he gets into later about when Dwayne Wade is coming off his knee surgery, his test, when any one of his athletes had ankle, knee, or hip injuries, they had to be able to do a 48-inch box drop, or sorry, 48-inch depth drop to a 48-inch
Yeah.
box jump. And, he's in there trying it at night when no one was watching, like,
Yeah.
like, and they're all trying to do it. Like I want to be able to do what I normally can, but you mentally can't, and you
Yep.
shouldn't. But it's like, that's why I liked it so much, because I could relate to it. I'm like, holy, like, I know exactly what they feel.
And that's what Grover was saying pretty much, was like, his idea of testing to see if somebody was ready to return is if his mind was ready to trust his body.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So like that's what that whole depth drop is about. He knows he can jump that high
Mm-hmm.
off a depth jump, but it's whether his mind can convince himself that he can do it and his body's capable of doing it.
Yeah, exactly. Allowing himself to do it without hesitation. It's the same thing. Like, I played that first game and I'm scared to make a hit, because even though I know my shoulder's okay, you're still hesitant, like you're not
Yeah.
playing that same way. Like you, even though I'm physically fine, it's that mental barrier that you have to break to get back to how you play like that. Yeah, exactly. It's just
Yeah.
breaking that mental barrier to go into a corner full speed, lay the body.
Yeah. Yeah. So now that we're talking about injuries, let's go into Dwayne Wade's. He gives an example of when he was winning championships and kind of what he endured before that. So, for example, many players get that first ring and find it extremely difficult to withstand the unthinkable pressure and expectations needed to stay at the top. They just can't sustain the drive and desire to do the work. Dwayne Wade got his first ring in 2006 and endured countless obstacles trying to get another, including multiple injuries and surgeries and an extremely challenging rehab with me, Tim Grover. So when LeBron James and Chris Bosh joined him in Miami in 2010, he could have taken their arrival as an opportunity to exhale, knowing he was no longer expected to carry the entire team by himself. Instead, he was able to share the physical demands of the season while adapting to his new role and showing LeBron how a championship team works together, that it's not about one guy shouldering the entire load. In any given game, there was a cleaner and a closer on the floor, with Dwayne and LeBron changing roles as needed, one or the other taking charge on any given night. They didn't have to discuss it, they just knew. Yet, even with less pressure on him, Dwayne never allowed his mental focus to waver, despite severe chronic leg injuries. End result, the second ring in 2012 and a third in 2013. So, like, this is, I mean, one thing, LeBron James, getting a point across to him, I can only imagine how actually difficult that would be, especially considering, like, to share a role on a team. Like, LeBron doesn't seem like that kind of guy.
Yeah.
So, and this is a perfect example of decentralized command. So I've mentioned this before, like this is so extreme ownership. This is like my Bible almost. So like I've read it multiple times, and the biggest thing he talks about is decentralized command. And it's pretty much like leading a team is more than just being the boss. It's about trusting the people around you to do their job correctly to allow yourself to do yours. So it's taking the pressure off your shoulders, trusting your teammates, your other executives, whatever it is. And this is a perfect example of that, right? So like when LeBron's not performing, Dwayne's performing, so that I really found that that correlation very, very interesting.
For sure.
Yeah.
And they pretty much had three too, like you mentioned. Chris Bosh was there as well.
Yeah, Chris Bosh. That's right. So this is like you see this a lot in pro sports where there's too much talent on one team and they're butting heads.
Mm-hmm.
But like this is a perfect example of where it's working, which is decentralized command.
Yeah.
Because when I was just gonna say, so when LeBron and Bosh joined Wade, their first year together, the three of them, they actually lost Mavericks, I remember. And there was kind of some tension because like we were saying, when you have so much talent on one team, a lot of times it can be hard to make sure that everyone's happy, getting the ball, getting their shots, and their playing time and everything. And then they improved. And I think by Dwayne Wade being right there with LeBron and working the extra hours, being the first guy in the building, the last guy out of the building after practice, after meetings, it's about that culture and building that culture. And by him still staying with that alpha mentality, hey, I want to be one of the best guys on this team, even though I have more talent around me, that bred that culture that allowed them to win, like you said, in 2012 and then again in 2013. And that props to Dwayne Wade for not taking his foot off the gas pedal, but instead going even harder and making sure that that team had that culture of excellence for whatever it was, 3 or 4 years. They had a great run there.
Yeah, I mean, like as we know as athletes ourselves, how important the team culture is. And I've been on teams, multiple teams, where the culture is just not there. And what do you think happens? The team doesn't perform. And that's all about buying into the system too. Like the higher you go up in the levels, the easier it is going to be to maintain that culture because everybody has the same goal, right? So like the more elite the players are, the more they want the same goal. But sometimes, you have some guys like, Colin at Middlesex, right? There's going to be guys who just don't give a shit.
Exactly.
So like that's a problem. That's a cancer to the team. So like nipping that in the bud is, it's huge. But obviously in the NBA, it's a different story, right? Everybody wants that ring. How much? That's a different, that's a whole different aspect of the game. You have your guys like LeBron, Pierce, guys like that, Larry Bird. All those guys are going to be your leaders who are kind of creating that culture, and then everybody else will follow. The closers, and yeah,
coolers,
yeah. All right, let's get back to the book here. So now we have an unknown name. So now we're on the don't think chapter. It was 10 p.m. when the black Suburban pulled up to the security gates of Attack Athletics, my training facility on the west side of Chicago. Not unusual. Pro athletes would show up at all hours to the place where Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, and Dwayne Wade had permanent lockers where countless superstars would work out or play ball or just hang out with the other guys who got it. On this particular night, though, one guy is in the gym and no one else knows he's there. Not his team, not the media, not his family. His teammates are in a hotel 2,000 miles away. Reporters are blowing up his phone with calls and texts. And it's the middle of the NBA playoffs with less than 72 hours until he has to be back on the court. The night before, the whole world watched him limp off the floor in pain. Now everyone wants to know the story. Is he okay? Can he play? I'm fine, he said at the post-game press conference. He's fine, said the coach, who has no idea where his superstar is tonight. We'll get him some treatment and he'll be good to go, said the GM, who already knows the player won't go near the team's training staff. Finally, when he's alone in the privacy of his room at the team's hotel, he makes one call to the confidential number saved in the phones of countless athletes around the world. Need some help, he says. How soon can you get here? I answer. Getting to me without anyone knowing is the easy part when you're an elite athlete. Call for a plane, grab your security guy, and go. Confidentiality guaranteed. Typically, the hard part comes when you arrive. Whether you're in need of emergency intervention or a long-term program or a psychological kick in the ass. Some guys arrive thinking they're going to fill out paperwork and stretch a little, and within the first hour, they've sweated through 3 T-shirts and they're puking in a trash can. But that night, the player and I knew the real issue wasn't physical. It's the end of the season. Everyone has injuries. I'm not going to fix anything major in a few hours, and the team's training staff could have handled the usual aches and pains. Let's be honest. You don't secretly charter a plane and fly 2,000 miles to get iced and taped. We can adapt around the limitation. Here's how you adjust your shot, push off this way, land that way, do this before the game, do that at halftime, get something done to the shoes. Ignore the pain for now. You're going to be uncomfortable, get used to it. Lay out the whole script, leaving nothing to chance. If he follows the plan, he'll be physically ready to play, or as ready as he can be. But mentally, that's another story, and that's why he made the call to me. He's listening to all the talk about whether he'll be ready to go, whether he can get the job done, whether he's lost a few steps, and now he's not even sure himself. The pressure is getting to him. External pressure that distracts and derails, not the internal pressure that can drive you to overcome anything. And instead of shutting it all out and trusting his instincts and natural ability, he's thinking. He flew 2,000 miles to hear these 2 words. Don't think. You already know what you have to do, and you know how to do it. What's stopping you? I mean, that's like, so Dylan, we were talking about this before, right? We were like, does this guy, like, when we were first reading it, does this guy actually know what he's talking about? Like how to train players and stuff when he's like, the guy's injured and he gets there and he's already sweated through 3 T-shirts. Like that doesn't sound very good for a trainer to do to somebody. But I mean, this guy is proven to be like the mental coach of all athletes. And this is like another perfect example right here. And it's almost like, I feel like athletes a lot of the time, they kind of need that reassurance that, that they know what they're doing, right? They know that they can trust their training to perform on the big stage, especially a big stage like that. I mean, you can only imagine how easy it is to second guess yourself or doubt something because you have you have an injury, maybe you're shot some air balls or something like that. All it takes is that one little thing, especially on a stage that big.
Well, confidence is key. And that's like, I think what he tries to reassure, like, don't think, like, you can't take the time to think about if like, oh, am I going to make this shot? What if this happens? Like, you can't think. You need to just trust your instincts and know that you have the confidence to accomplish whatever your goal is. And I think that's what he tries to reassure.
Yeah,
I remember,
and go ahead, Colin.
I was just going to say, I remember the first time I read it, that what immediately came to mind for me was it's just about the situations that are presented to us that we can't control. Like, how do we view those? And then how is our perception like allowing us to attack those challenges? Because a lot of times those are adversities, and then it's okay. Like, am I looking at this, from a perspective, like a victim perspective, or I'm looking at this like as the end all be all if it's a negative, or is this just like a speed bump on the path to come back? We were talking about with injuries, with Dwayne Wade, obviously with Kobe, LeBron's dealt with injuries too. And so I think just about how we attack the adversities that come our way that we can't control, and then also just day to day, every day in life, how are we looking at our work, our craft? Like we always talk about loving what we do. Like it shouldn't feel like a vacation on the weekend, because we should love what we do so much during the week. Every day we should have that mentality that we're loving what we're doing. And I think it's just all about perception with the situations that are presented to us.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wanted to read a few. So this whole chapter, or 50 pages, whatever you want to call it, is all about him kind of getting the point across about what a cleaner is. And so all these stories that we're reading right now are all examples of cleaners, or who went on to be cleaners. Like there's this one section that he talks about how he wasn't convinced that LeBron was a cleaner until he won the third champ. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And that's kind of the truth. Like, what is success determined by in sports?
Yeah. And he had that. He has the one saying in there, the one part where he's breaking down. He's like, coolers. What does he say? Coolers will have a great game. Closers will have a great season. Cleaners will have a great career.
Yep. And yeah, that's what it's all about when you really think about it, is the consistency. And we talk about it all the time. It's the consistency with anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's, for a social media influencer, it's posting daily, posting regularly. For an athlete, it's making sure you're getting the right amount of sleep, training regularly, right? Putting the right food into your body. Yeah.
There's no magic trick. It's always about consistency. And how often do you consistently do the things that you need to do to accomplish your goals? Like working out, having a great workout once a week and getting 2 good nights sleep. So, it needs to be every night. That's the difference.
Yeah. And so now I want to hear what you guys have to say. So obviously the book is called Relentless. So he gives a few examples of what he believes relentless is. Now, I kind of agree to disagree on one thing that he said. So let me read this one section here. Back to the book. The word relentless is used in sports to describe the most intense competitors and achievers imaginable, those who stop at nothing to get the end result. In sports, being relentless is measured by victories and trophies and championship rings. In real life, being relentless is a state of mind that can give you the strength to achieve, to survive, to overcome, to be strong when others are not. It means craving the end result so intensely that the work becomes irrelevant, not just in sports, but in everything you do. Now, I think you know what I'm going to disagree with here. I don't agree with this line. I believe in what he says about being relentless, but this part I don't agree with. It means craving the end result so intensely that the work becomes irrelevant. Now, I think the only way you get the end result is that you
fall in love with the process.
Yeah. You fall in love with the process. If you lose touch with the process, there is no end result.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing there. So
I agree. That was something when I read that too. I was like, but the best part of my day is going to practice,
Yeah.
That's what I live for. If that became irrelevant, my whole life would be irrelevant because that's all I think about,
I know. And it's not even just that, but like, I'm sure you've experienced this too, right? Where you strive to get something, you set a goal, you set a task, you complete that task, but it's not as fulfilling as you thought it was going to be. And you're like, what I really enjoyed was, grinding in the gym or whatever it was, whatever you did to get it. It doesn't even have to do with sports, right? Well, obviously it has to do with sports, but it can be everything in life, right? that end goal, because you know the work you put in, and it's like, all right, well, kind of equates itself with the work that I put in, that end goal.
And I agree with him. Like, you have to be so hungry for the end goal, for the victory. But like you said, Joe, you have to love the process. And I don't think the work becomes irrelevant. I also think we're reading into that a bit much. When he says irrelevant, I don't think he literally means like, oh, the work, like they don't even care about it. Well, no,
it just becomes
they
easy,
do, and
I think is what he's trying to say.
love it. Yeah,
exactly.
I look
agree.
at use of irrelevance like it's just a part of where I need to get to.
Yeah.
So
no,
it is what it is, and it's an automatic for me to do it because I'm so determined to get the goal.
I mean, I think it would be, now this might be stretching it a little bit too much, but now if you put the things you do in the process as the end goal, and that's like your end goal is grinding in the gym like that, just training without an end goal.
But that doesn't work. Yes, you need a goal. Yes,
exactly.
I agree.
So I understand what he's saying in that concept.
Yeah, I think like you need something to strive for. That's what keeps you motivated. But when you fall in love with the process and with the work, that's what gets you to your goal.
Yeah,
like you can't have one without the other.
Yeah, and I do think he put that in there to kind of like get your mind thinking and what he actually means about that. Because, I mean, he goes on to describe things about cleaners. The most intense and driven competitor imaginable. You refuse limitations. You quietly and forcefully do whatever it takes to get what you want. You understand the insatiable addiction to success. It defines your entire life. So, and you know what? It's like you have to, what I'm getting from all this is you have to expect more of yourself in getting to your goals, right? If you set the bar low, you're going to get a low. And it's kind of, we've talked about this before, how like Elon Musk says, try to achieve your 10-year plan in 6 months. You might fail, but you'll be further ahead than anyone who accepted that it was going to take 10 years. And a big thing is he goes on to say, it's time to stop listening to what everyone else says about you, telling you what to do, how to react, how you should feel. Let them judge you by your results and nothing else. It's none of their business how you get where you're going. If you're relentless, there's no halfway, no could or should or maybe. Don't tell me the glass is half full or half empty. You either have something in that glass or you don't. So I love how like blunt he is with a lot of his descriptions. And that really makes it like understand what a true cleaner is, like a true cleaner. I mean, there's this one part, and I'm sure I'll come across it. Yeah, it's right here. So I'm going to read this section. So right back to the book. To get you there, I'm going to talk about some provocative topics, and you'll get no apologies from me if that makes you uncomfortable. Success is about dealing with reality, facing your demons and addictions, and not putting a smiley face on everything you do. If you need a pat on the back and a good job to get your ass off the couch, this is not the book for you. Because if you want to be unstoppable, you have to face who you really are and make it work for you, not against you. Truly relentless people, the cleaners, are predators with dark sides that refuse to be taught to be good. And whether you know it or not, you do have a dark side. Use it well, and it can be your greatest gift. So it's like, and that's kind of the concept about like, just, getting, it's the same thing we talk about with working out, right? And you don't want to do a set or something, you got to get like raw. You got to get raw with yourself and just fucking do the work, And that's kind of what the concept that he's getting at here, which I just love. I love how he words the book.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you said, he's very blunt. That's probably the best way to describe him.
Yep. Yeah. All right. So now going on with that story about the late night visitor, he says, in the case of my late night visitor, he had lost his connection to that end result. He was so distracted by his fear of losing that he couldn't focus on what he had to do to win. Couldn't stem the wave of frustration and emotion that was drowning all his natural ability and confidence. His negativity on the court was evident. He was rolling his eyes at his teammates and coaches, grimacing as if he were dying out there. His teammates began to see that, and suddenly they were like troops marching into battle without their leader, completely shutting down. That's how great teams lose. The leader doesn't show up. It happens in business every day when the boss shows his frustration in meetings or snaps at his employees. He's not confident. He's not cool. He's not on his game. And it comes out in little ways he might think no one else perceives, but you can be sure everyone picks up on it and panics. So like those are the things that you look for in a leader, that it's all subconscious, right? You don't really know it, but when you see a leader not do what he does best and kind of questions himself, doubts himself, that's what causes a team to fall apart. So he goes on to say, forget about losing. I tell him, looking for that click behind the eyes when you know the guy gets it. Forget about trying, because if you're just trying, then losing is still an option. You want to be the best? Then you ignore the pain and the exhaustion and the pressure to please everyone else. You don't let your enemies take your balls. You don't let them set up shop in your head. When all hell breaks loose on the outside, you barely notice. You're calm on the inside because you're ready, prepared, and the best at what you do. You don't tell anyone how you're going to handle the situation. You just handle it. Everyone else is panicking and choking, and you say, no problem. You step on the other guy's throat, and you finish the fight. And afterward, you don't explain how you did it. They won't understand, and they don't have to. Just take a moment alone to recognize what you accomplished and move on to the next challenge. By now, it's early morning. His plane is waiting to take him back. Finish it, I say again. Click. He gets it. Time to go. I mean, there's a quote out there about winners and losers, and the true winners, you never know if they won or lost. And that's kind of basically the concept that he's trying to get across here.
What do you mean? What do you mean you never know if they won or lost?
So like, you just finished a game and you're leaving the rink, leaving the arena, whatever it is. Somebody's looking at you. They don't know if you
just
won or
based
lost.
on your perception.
Based on the way you're carrying yourself.
Yep.
And you kind of always
How
have
you
your head
handle
up.
yourself.
You're always looking forward. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. Exactly. And that's I mean, that's really what it's all about, right? That's that confidence aspect of things. It's like same thing goes with business. You know, you have a CEO, if he just took a major loss, a big hit, and he's sulking about it, and like his team's going to follow him, and it's just going to be a domino effect. Like the domino effect is everywhere, man. It happens to everyone, every team, every leader.
Yeah.
I'm going to go on here and read about his story now, Tim Grover. And this is where he talks about his first real client. I think I'm pretty sure this was his first client, which is insane to think about. All right, here we go. Back to the book. Relentless is about achieving the impossible. I know for a fact that anyone could do it. When I was still in high school, just a 5'11" basketball player in Chicago, I was watching a North Carolina game on television and saw Michael Jordan for the first time. He was a skinny freshman with moves I had never seen, completely instinctive and natural. He just knew what to do out there without even thinking about it. I didn't know anything about him, but I knew this kid was going to be a superstar. Several years later, I had a master's degree in exercise science and was working as a trainer at a Chicago health club. And Michael was still skinny, but now he was a superstar with the Chicago Bulls. I had contacted the Bulls numerous times in the 1980s when I became a trainer, hoping for a shot at working with any of the players. I wrote letters to every player except Michael because I figured if he wanted a trainer, he would already have one, and it wouldn't be a guy like me who was just getting started. No one was interested. At that time, basketball players still weren't into weight training. The old school belief was that a bulky upper body would mess up your shot. Then in 1989, I saw a small newspaper story about how Michael was sick of being outmuscled by the world champion Detroit Pistons and the rest of the league. Once again, I contacted the Bulls and talked my way into a meeting with the team doctor, John Heffern, and the head athletic trainer, Mark Piefel. What were the chances they would advise their superstar player to work with this unknown trainer who had never trained a professional athlete? None, everyone said. Forget it. It's impossible. Of course, everything is impossible until someone does it. Michael had worked with a trainer once, injured his back during the workout, and was hesitant about trying again. Yet he also instinctively knew it wasn't enough to have the greatest basketball skills in the history of the game. If he wanted to be more than a legend, if he was truly going to become an icon, he would also need to take his body to the ultimate level, and he was willing to do whatever was necessary to make that happen. So we told John and Mark to find someone who understood exactly what he needed. A few days later, after my first meeting with the Bulls, they called me to meet again at their suburban practice facility. I figured it was another interview with the training staff. I had no idea it was being taken to a meeting with Michael Jordan at his home. Michael and I talked for an hour, and I laid out the whole plan, showing him how we would slowly make him stronger and minimize the risk of injury, explaining how every physical change would affect his shot and how he would make adjustments along the way, getting his whole body working in balance for maximum peak performance and probably extending his career. He listened closely to everything I had to say before he responded. Not possible, he finally said. It's too good. Just doesn't sound right. It's right, I told him. I'll give you a 30-day schedule detailing exactly what we're going to do, how it's going to affect your body, your game, your overall strength. I'll tell you how you're going to feel so you can adjust to the changes we're going to make. We'll plan what you'll eat, and when you'll sleep. We'll look at every detail, leaving nothing to chance. You'll see how everything works together. He gave me 30 days. I stayed for 15 years. So that's pretty much his story of how he got started. I mean, that's an underdog story for sure. I mean, do you think he actually thought he would get one of the NBA players right when he became a trainer? Oh my God.
Imagine, I wish we could interview Jordan and listen to what he had to say. Like, okay, ask him. So what do you think of Tim Grover? Like, how did he come into your life? Talk about the first 30 days. What did he do that made you be like, yep, this is the guy. I'm keeping him around, you know?
Yeah.
It'd be
and
crazy.
He was definitely hard on him too, because he goes on to say when he finally retired, he said, if I ever see you in my neighborhood again, I'm going to shoot you.
Yeah.
So it was definitely a professional relationship. I mean, I'm sure they were buddies too, but obviously he made him work to become the icon who he is now.
Yeah.
You know. All right, we got let's go. We got one more story here that I want to talk about, and then we'll discuss a little bit more about cleaners, and then we'll wrap it up, and we'll move on to 50 to 100 for the next episode. All right, here we go. The night the Miami Heat beat the Oklahoma City Thunder to win the 2012 NBA championship, I wrote a message on a slip of paper before the game and put it in my pocket. It was for my longtime client and friend, Dwayne Wade. Dwyane had called me after game 2 of the finals, asking if I would fly to Miami to see if I could get him and his damaged knee through the rest of the series. I was surprised. We have a long, successful relationship, but we hadn't worked together for the last 2 seasons, in part because he had chosen to stay in Miami to train near his teammate LeBron James. But we had stayed in touch, and like all my clients, past and present, he knew I would always be there if he needed me. A different player might not have made that call. He could have relied on LeBron to carry the Heat to the title. Could have tried coping with the pain, hoping his knee would give him just a couple more games. That's what most players would have done. But when a championship is on the line and you're a cleaner, you don't let others carry the load, and you don't just hope it all works out. You make every possible move to put yourself where you need to be. Now, this is exactly what he talks about the whole time about being a cleaner. This is another perfect example. So with the series tied 1-1, I flew to Miami. It was obviously Dwayne's knee would require surgery after the season. We couldn't slap a quick solution on it. I told him I'd do what I could to make him feel stronger and more explosive for the next few days. I also told him that his one championship ring from 2006 wasn't going to be enough. He would need at least 3 to have a career that would be considered meaningful. But what I really wanted to say to him was this. When you're one of the greatest athletes in your sport, you don't announce you're old at the age of 30 and ready to pass the team along to the younger guys. If you think old, you become old. It wasn't that long ago you won the NBA scoring title after fighting back from simultaneous knee and shoulder surgeries, willing yourself through our grueling 2-month rehab that would have taken anyone else 3 months. You did that. Do not let me tell you you can't do this. For those next few days, we worked on things he hadn't done in a long time, sometimes until 2 a.m., alone in the arena, away from teammates and media, and all other distractions. For the first time in too long, it was all about him. Heat took game 3 and then game 4 to lead the series 3-1. One more win, or the battleground would move back to Oklahoma City and the Thunder's home court advantage. It was time to finish the fight right now. A lot of our work was physical. His body was coming alive in ways he hadn't experienced in a long time. But as with all serious competitors, the key component was mental. He needed to find his way back to being the real Dwayne Wade and not just one of the acclaimed big three of the Miami Heat. He had become so accustomed to sharing the stage with LeBron and Chris Bosh and the rest of the team that he had forgotten where he came from, how hard he worked to be one of the very best. I don't believe in long, windy pep talks or speeches. Anything that requires a long explanation probably isn't the truth. And when I say something to one of my players, he knows he's going to get the truth. On the night of Game 5, when the Heat won the title, the note in my pocket read, "In order to have what you really want, you must first be who you really are." I wanted him to feel that time when it wasn't about smoke or lights or hype or keeping everyone else happy, when it was all about what happened on the court, when he fought with his life to get there, when anyone who fucked with him would get a 48-minute blast of controlled rage. It was time to trust what he felt inside, not what everyone else was telling him to feel. That's your name on the jersey. Remind them who you are. Go get what's yours. That night, as the young and determined Oklahoma City Thunder tried and failed to fight back from elimination, Dwyane was all killer instinct, deep in that zone where he's explosive and dominant and aggressive. Others would have great performances. Mike Miller and Shane Battier and others raised their games beyond all expectations. But as the minutes ticked down, it was Dwyane's cool, intense confidence and commitment and leadership that earned the championship and got him that second ring. I never gave him the note. I didn't have to. That night, he was relentless. So, and one thing that strikes me is about his work ethic himself. Like, he's flying around the country to go meet with his clients. Like, that's dedication right there.
Yeah. I wonder at what point he knew that this is what he was going to do. And this is how, like, this is who he'd be, you know?
Yeah, I know.
I wonder if this is always what he wanted to do, or if it kind of just progressed and it turned into this, like, all of a sudden he has Michael Jordan. It just kind of evolved from there.
Yeah, and I'm sure he evolved as a cleaner once he started working with these guys too. It was probably kind of bouncing off each other, the work ethics of both people. But honestly, this book is great for athletes coming up because they can see what it actually takes to kind of get to that next level. And he talks a few times, and we've talked about it too, about backing yourself into corner and not giving yourself a plan B, right? Always having that plan A, because plan B just distracts from plan A. And that's kind of what these guys go through, right? They're all zoned in on one thing and one thing only, and it's winning the championship, having that winning season, coming back from that injury, like all that stuff that comes along with being an athlete. You guys got anything?
No, I think, are we going to discuss the coolers, closers, cleaners page?
Yeah, well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about cleaners first. There's a lot about cleaners, but I want to pick a few things out, just kind of descriptor things, just so when we go on to the next episodes, like, people understand what he's trying to get across here and what the stories relate to. So he talks here about how they take responsibility for everything. When something goes wrong, they don't blame others because they never really count on anyone else to get the job done in the first place. They just clean up the mess and move on. And then he goes on to give examples about a custodian who has the keys to the whole entire building, and he has technically all the power in the building. But this is all about extreme ownership, right? So if you're the leader of a team and your team loses, that's pretty much like you taking the grunt for it. Right? Not pointing fingers, not saying it was this person's fault or that person's fault. It was your fault, right? Because the leader is really who carries the whole team, right? Everybody else is following his lead. And he goes on and says, a cleaner is a calm and unflappable, cool and steady, never too high or too low, never too happy or too depressed. So this is that cool, level-headed state that we're talking about. Nobody knows if you won or lost when you're walking out of the building.
Yeah.
He never sees problems, only situations to resolve. And when he finds the solution, he doesn't waste time explaining it. He just says, I got this. And when it's over and he gets the results, all the others just stand there shaking their heads in disbelief, wondering how he did it. So, I mean, that's the humble aspect of being a cleaner, right?
Yeah.
Just kind of taking everything with a grain of salt. So what do you guys think of cleaners?
It's like, it's the elite of the elite. Like, you can have a great string. Like let's take. Here's a question for you, Joey. Take Joe Thornton or Patrick Marleau. Played 20 plus seasons in the NHL. Both have played over 1,500 games. Two of the most active point scorers in NHL in the game right now. Yep. Neither of them have a cup. Do you consider them a cleaner? Like they're both going to be in the Hall of Fame. Marlowe's going to be in the Hall of Fame already. Same with Thornton. Yep. They're both going to be in the Hall of Fame. They were drafted 1-2 in 97. I want to say it was. Like you're talking about first and second overall picks, carried the franchise, led the Sharks through all those runs, but they never got a cup.
Yeah, well, so these are like the rare examples that you have of, I think. So like I said, I don't agree with everything he says in here. And I think that's one of them. I think that defining an elite athlete by how many championships he has, that's kind of stretching it. I mean, there are limitations to this, right? And I think the NBA is also very different. You know, I think it's way harder, much harder. And in the NBA, you have your elite teams who they stand by themselves. You know what I mean? Like there are teams who don't hold a candle to the top teams. Whereas in the NHL, you have any team can beat any team on any given night. That's just how it goes.
Look at the Blues. So not last season, 2019. They were the worst team in the league in February. And then they came to win the cup and be the best team. You know?
You're not going to see that in the NBA. And I think this is his problem with this book is he's taking examples from just NBA. And
I wonder if he trains other athletes.
Yeah, I'm going to have to do some research on that too. But that's definitely where he's at fault here. And I don't know, Colin, if you agree, but I think that a cleaner is determined by more than just how many championship rings they have. You know, but then again, I think maybe a cleaner, I say maybe if he wants to use that as a description, I'd go one step higher and say an icon. If you want to be an icon, you have to have those championships. Well, like he was talking about Jordan, you know?
Right. I think he describes a cleaner basically as sort of an icon because that cleaner has to have everything. And it needs to be, you need to play it in a position that's important enough to impact the entire organization. You know, you have to have the confidence and the team building to be able to unite your organization, your team, and uplift everybody. And then you also have to live up to the expectations on the field and be that generational player.
Yeah.
So it's obviously very rare, but I think the way that he describes it, championships are important to be his definition of a cleaner.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Absolutely. But going back to Dylan's point, so he does say coolers can have an amazing game, closers can have an amazing season, cleaners can have amazing careers. And Joe Thornton and Patrick Marleau have definitely had amazing careers. So,
okay. Now I'll give you an example on the other end of the spectrum. Okay. So you have guys like Thornton and Marleau, never won a cup, probably the most deserving of a cup, or those are probably the two biggest names in hockey. But look at the other end of the spectrum. How about a guy like Chris Kunitz? He has 4 Stanley Cups. He's 4 of them. Yeah, that's the most active cups, I guess. Well, now did he just retire? Or is he still playing? But at the time, he had the most Stanley Cups of any active player at 4. 4 Stanley Cups. That's more than Crosby, way more than Ovi. Any of these.
And you're telling me he's an icon
in the NHL. But no one knows who Chris Kunitz is unless you really follow it. And it's not like he's had crazy 100-point seasons, winning Hart trophies, winning the Art Ross, none of that. But he's on a good team. And he was a part of a dynasty, and he's won 4 cups. He's been a part of 4 championship teams, but he wasn't the guy, you know?
Yeah.
So now, I don't think you can just define it on championship rings, because I think Kunitz is a guy who's an example of someone who was a part of something great, but they weren't kind of the ringleader. They weren't the cleaner, you know? Yeah. But then you have guys like Thornton and Marleau who are the cleaners of their teams, have been for 2 decades, but never got to the championship. You know, that's why I don't think you can simply define it by championships.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I have an interesting comparison off of that. How about Julian Edelman? Because he never won a Pro Bowl in the regular season, but when it got to the postseason and all the pressure was on him, all the bright lights, everyone was watching, there's no doubt he was a cleaner in the postseason.
Yeah.
Super Bowl 51, the greatest catch, I think, in the NFL history, that catch he made. And he put it all, it was all him.
Yeah.
Everything
I think people who are actually picking this book apart, like we are, we're kind of playing devil's advocate here in terms of what he's explaining. But from an NBA perspective, so a Chris Kunitz in the NBA. So you look at the lower end, not lower end guys, but middle guys on an NBA team, or Dwayne Wade's team, LeBron James' team, and they've won the same amount of championships that they have. Are they cleaners? Do you know what I mean? Like, or is it just the upper echelon, the top guys who are considered the cleaners? And maybe we'll get into it later on in the book, but that's pretty much what I'm getting from it. I mean, he has a ton of different descriptions of what a cleaner is. Cleaners never feel as if they've achieved success because there's always more to do. Cleaners rarely congratulate you for doing your job. They just expect you to do it. And that's the extreme ownership. That's the decentralized command. That's like trusting your teammates that you can do this. And I'm going to do my job because you're doing yours. That's kind of the whole concept of that. But yeah, this is, you guys got anything else before we wrap this up?
No, I think that's good for the first 50. I'm excited for the next 50, and hopefully we get into it a little more. Yeah.
I'm excited to see more stories that he has from the guys that he's worked with.
For sure. I love this format too. I mean, we get a lot of these ideas, and then we can connect them to past episodes, and we'll continue to have the guests too. So I think it's a great new dynamic going. I'm excited.
Definitely a good new dynamic. And if you guys have our listeners, if you guys have any feedback or any suggestions on what we should change, or if we should do anything, reach out to us at for our email, podcast@theunderdogbrand.com, or you can reach out to us on Instagram, Behind the Underdogs, or the Underdog Brand main page. But besides that, so this was pretty much the foreword all the way to page 50. And there's a lot condensed into, just 50 pages. So it'll be interesting to see as we get more into this. The next 50 pages will probably be even more dense. So we'll do our best to dissect it and give you guys the best examples from those pages. But thank you very much for listening, and see you next episode.